So where are you now? Down in Atlanta?
I am still in Atlanta. Yep. I'm
Wow.
gonna be here for a while.
That's interesting. It's funny. Most people and yourself, I haven't like talked to you in so many years. I think the last time I saw you in person was Josh and Alyssa's wedding.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I was still living back in Connecticut then. So that was 2007, 8 maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was '08. It was definitely because I was living in Connecticut then too.
You were? When were you in Connecticut? Or where in
Yeah.
Connecticut?
I was in or it might have been before actually, it might have been after that because I was in Connecticut in '08 and '09. I was in Stamford.
Okay. I left in '09. Okay, so I went back to Hartford. I left in '09 and moved to Atlanta. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Nice.
yeah, that's funny. I do remember. Did you grow up in Connecticut originally?
Yes. So I'm originally from Hartford. And then we moved to Lower Gwinnett when I was 12. So that's how I went to Wissahickon through the end. And then I picked Penn State because I thought my parents would be there. They moved back to Connecticut a week after I graduated high school. I was like, what kind of crap is this? So I was just
Wow.
stuck.
That's really a thing. Zach Rowe talked about his parents left and went to Texas the day after high school graduation. And he was like, where are you guys going? And same thing for you.
It's
That's
just,
interesting.
it's kind of child abuse when you think about it, but I'm over it. It's fine. It's
So
fine. We're good now.
so then what was Hartford like compared to Wissahickon?
It's interesting you asked that because, and I can be honest on this, right?
Yep.
Okay. I actually had never really been around anybody except Jamaicans and a few I'll say West Indians and Hispanic people until I moved to Pennsylvania. Because my family being Jamaican, it was a large community of Black families, mostly Jamaicans, Hispanic families, mostly Puerto Ricans in Hartford, Bloomfield, Windsor kind of areas.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until we moved to Lower Gwinnett where I was like, oh, this is a different experience than I've ever had in my entire life. So it was a good thing though, because I needed some diversity in my life. And I think that's what my parents were definitely going for. But it was crazy because I didn't think about it probably until maybe 10 years ago that was my first real introduction to people outside of my little, Jamaican community pretty much.
That's interesting. What was the makeup of the schools? I guess, elementary school at that point, maybe a little middle school when you're up there. What's the makeup of the schools up there?
It was mostly West Indians and Hispanic families, mostly West Indian, really, where I grew up. Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's usually
Mhm.
when I talk to some students doing this, usually with white students, one of the
Mhm.
one of the things that comes up is the lack of diversity for them in their friend groups. Like, oh, it's
Mhm.
girls say I hung out with girls that looked exactly like me and like outside of sports.
Exactly.
But here and the other funny thing is that I often talk about it with Hickens, seeing like the group
Mhm.
of the different groups, right? And you see the group of Black kids, but I never even thought about different divisions of Black kids hanging out. And so
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
not even seeing like just like plain old Black African American. You're all Jamaican and
Yes.
island.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. That was what it was. So if I came across somebody in Hartford or the Bloomfield area, so I was born in Hartford. We moved to Bloomfield, which is, like Ambler Lower Gwinnett type situation. And whenever we'd come across, I remember very few friends of mine that whose family were true, as they call them, true Yankees. They're actually from the States, generations down the line. Like my older brother and I, Brent and I were the first generation born here in our family. So it was very different for us.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yep. On my
So
mom's side.
so then what brings you guys to the Philadelphia area to Lower Gwinnett?
So my dad was the CIO well, he was somebody at Travelers, and then Prudential AARP out in Valley Forge approached him, and that's what brought us to. He ended up being the CIO at AARP, I believe, and so we all kind of made the great migration to Philly,
Okay.
and I went kicking and screaming. I did not want to go.
I was gonna say, like going from Hartford to like these nice little suburbs here, is
Mhm.
that like that's a pretty big jump, right?
It is, and Hartford is the city within Connecticut, but it's nothing like a Philly or an Atlanta.
Okay.
It's still, to me, there's not much to do. The running joke is, as an adult, you only go there if you're like wanting to work in insurance. Like that's where dreams go to die, is what we all say. Because there
Funny,
isn't really a social life. Nothing like that happens in Hartford.
funny. We say the same thing about Stanford.
But you're not from Stanford, are you?
No, no, I was born and raised, down here in Ambler. Um,
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
yeah, and then yeah, in 08 and 09 just went up there for work, and that was just like it was a very big switch on many
Yeah.
things,
Mhm.
personality being the biggest thing, but um I guess I've watched like those documentaries and like Gangland episodes about like the bad shit that happens in Danbury and Hartford and
Yes, yes. And it's yeah, definitely it was a cultural shift, absolutely. But my parents did a very good job of keeping me and my brothers away from any of that, just based on our environments and kind of where we grew up. So it was a blessing for sure.
uh one are you a middle child?
I am. I have an older brother. So Brent's 5 years older than me, and then Blake is 10 years younger than me. So there's quite the gap.
All B's.
All bees. Yep. There's a lot of bees in my family.
So then you
Mhm.
so then you come in when you're 12 and you start in the middle school. Is that
Yes.
seventh grade?
So they planned it where my older brother moved the beginning of our sixth grade year.
Okay.
But then I didn't move into the last marking period of our sixth grade year because my parents wanted me to have some friends and get to know some people, which actually worked out well. We moved to Hunt Club right off. What is that, 309? I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
And I made really good friends, in particular, like we're friends this day, Lorraine or Barbara. And so that it really worked out well for me that I at least had one friend going into seventh grade. And then she, of course, left. But so it it worked out. It made sense, but at the time I just did not want to go because all I knew was my little bubble. So I was not happy. It was a long time before I became happy.
That's interesting. It's they wanted you to move here so you could kind of get your foot in the door. But one of
Yeah,
my big hangups about middle school was how hard it was to keep my foot in the door because every year we're changing pods and you might make friends in
exactly.
one year and then you get to the next year and you've got a completely different group of kids.
Exactly. I couldn't stand that. I absolutely couldn't stand that. It was very, to me, where I had come from, it was who I was in school with in elementary school every single year. There were maybe two classes per grade, but you were the same people pretty much. So I wasn't a fan of that. Did we have pods in high school? We didn't have pods in high school, right?
No, no.
I didn't think so. Yeah, no.
So then what kind of kid were you? What were you doing for fun before you come to PA and then once you actually get here?
So I was heavy into sports, going back to my Jamaican roots, soccer since I was like 5 years old. I was actually the only girl on the boys soccer team. That's how good I was in Hartford and Bloomfield. So I did soccer, basketball, of course. I really thought I was good at basketball until I would watch like Jessica and Ann. And I'd be like, I should have stuck with soccer. Like, this is not for me anymore. I thought I was phenomenal until I kind of went to high school and I was like, you're not that good, Bianca. You're okay, but you're not like them. So I should have stuck with soccer. But I mean, every sport you could imagine I was in, even double dutch. Me and my girlfriends and cousins, we were on a double dutch team in Bloomfield. That was a big thing for us too.
Yeah, they
So
didn't
I
have that in
mean,
Wissahickon.
no, definitely wasn't exactly. And I'm still the double dutch queen, I have to tell you. But
Oh,
still have my rope, the t-shirts, everything.
okay.
But I wasn't a big TV watcher because I wasn't allowed to watch TV. All I do is watch TV now because I'm still rebelling against my parents, I guess.
You're
But
catching up.
exactly. I mean, as soon as I went to college, I just started watching TV and eating pork. That's all I did.
Breaking free.
Breaking free because my father, we didn't eat pork, red beef. We had like chicken franks and turkey bacon. Like that's what I grew up on.
Really?
So yeah, my dad was, I mean, I think he didn't eat pork until maybe 2 years ago. Yeah. He stopped eating pork in his 20s.
And no red meat either.
Mm-mm. He still doesn't eat red meat. Yeah.
Because isn't
Mm-hmm.
that like all I know really about like Jamaican food? The biggest portion is like jerk food, and isn't that like a
Yeah.
huge part of it? Besides, I know there's jerk chicken, but
So my father actually isn't Jamaican. He's from Naugatuck, Connecticut.
oh,
So he's more like the country. But my mother's side, yes, absolutely. Oxtail, jerk chicken, all that is escovitch fish. It's just thinking about it right now. Yeah, it's definitely a totally different dynamic than traditional American food.
It's funny you say that you were so into soccer because I took a peek at the yearbook and I noticed that you played soccer 12th grade and then no other year. And what I do remember was basketball, of course. And I thought you were good. And
well, thank you.
Yeah. But I then I remember, I think you might have come off the bench in high school, right?
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked. I was like, Bianca not start? That's funny that there was a division.
Grade year. Yes, I started my 12th grade year. But again, it was well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate that confidence. But until I really thought I was phenomenal in basketball. And I don't know if I just got lazy in high school or it just didn't become as much of a priority for me. But when I thought I was good until I would see Jessica handle the ball and shoot. And I was like, just take me out the game. We're done. Like, I'm not even gonna compete with this. It's just not gonna work. So
I'm ready to set fouls for you guys. Set some hard picks.
Exactly. I was the anticipator and the rebounder. That's what I had to stay in my lane.
So you said that it was pretty tough and it didn't get better for a few years. So does that mean like from the friend zone, just you're having a hard time connecting once you're here in 7th grade full time?
So I don't know. My whole family will tell you that I was the rebellious, the bad kid, air quotes, mind you, because I don't believe it. But I will say, living in Hartford and Bloomfield, I did get into quite a lot of altercations. Kids being kids. Like I wasn't a bully by any means, but it was just a lot of just kids being kids type things. And then we moved to Lower Gwinnett Ambler, and I kind of went into a shell. And I think it was because I didn't look like the majority of people anymore. So I didn't know what to do, what to say, how to act. It was a really difficult, and I didn't talk to my parents about that probably until a few years ago, kind of explained to them how that made me feel. And I understood why they did that. I certainly did it, but it really was a difficult transition for me to not feel like the majority, if that makes sense. And so to not feel as if I'm part of the group and the majority, it was hard to, so I rebelled in a different way where my grades started to slack because I knew that fighting wasn't going to be the answer anymore. And I was getting older, of course.
Yeah.
And so my grades started to slack, or then like I had a even more rebellious attitude towards my parents, and just different things would happen. So once probably going into the end of 8th grade, I kind of started to get my footing. And then high school, I think that I made a good amount of friends in middle school, but even in middle school, it was a very petty atmosphere to me. It was just very much still like we're still all trying to learn who we are and go into high school and be those big guys and gals. And eventually we got there.
Middle school was really tough for me. And that's when my parents got divorced in 7th grade. So
oh, wow.
Going through like all of that, I think from 7th grade was a really tough year. Got in a lot of fights. 8th grade, I started coming out of it a lot more, but I had actual friends in 8th grade pod for like the first time ever. And then high school was definitely like that era where like I felt like you said, you've got to find other ways to deal with your stuff. But I felt like at that point, the stigma was already attached to me. Right. And I started, it was a Hicken from kindergarten. So like a bulk of these people wow. I had known for the entire time, but I found it really hard, even though I had changed my mindset and wasn't quite as harsh as I had been. I found it hard to break away from that. Did you get any kind of slack being the quote unquote bad kid while trying to figure this out in middle school? And then did you experience anything like that, trying to break out of it, or you changing and people kind of treating you differently?
Yeah, I would definitely say I did. I realized early on, and one of the things that my dad would always say is that your character is really all people are going to remember. They're not going to remember anything else about you. It's going to be your character, who you are as a person, how you come across. It's not just first impression, it's every impression. And it's funny, I think I was 21 the year my parents got divorced. I was 21, and I called my dad and I was like, literally a light bulb went off and I was like, I get it. I get what you meant. I understood why you did the many things, why you were so damn strict. I mean, like I said, we could watch 2 hours of TV and 1 hour had to be the news. Like, wow. What? And that was through middle school, mind you. But I really did start to realize what they're doing. I never wanted to admit it, but what they're doing has a purpose. And so I started to it got to the point where my dad had instilled in us, or both my parents had instilled in us, that having your own is very important. So I started getting babysitting jobs. I got my first job at 15 at Gennardi's grocery store as a bagger because I did not want to ask them for lunch money anymore. I don't know if you remember, but I used to like wash the lunch tables to get free lunch. So I would get the $20 from them and get free lunch because I was like, I'm moving out this house. They're too strict. I can't deal with this anymore. But it started to really dawn on me in high school why they were doing not allowing me to do things that my friends could do, because that would be a separation for me. Like all my friends could do things I couldn't do. So it's like, I'm not really part of the friend group anymore. So I did see a shift, but that's something that I was obviously okay with. Long term.
Yeah. I didn't know that you watched. So you cleaned the lunch tables so that you could keep your lunch money.
Yep. If you clean the lunch tables, you would get free lunch.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So your parents are strict and you kind of like kept you were kept at a distance. One of the things that I just found interesting, just being like young and like looking at people, and I looked at people with like, I don't know, just these stereotypes. And so it was, for me, was like pretty surprising to, start hanging out with Alyssa and to see that, like, over here's Matt Whitteman, across the street, there's Jen's, and it's like, oh, who lives there? Bianca. And you go, Bianca lives here? Right? Like, big old house, nice little, cul-de-sac community. Most of the Black kids that I encountered growing up lived where I lived in Ambler, South Ambler, West. South Ambler, West Ambler, Penn Lynn. That was the bulk of Black kids in our school. So you're, about a mile away. You're living in this house. What is that? What's that like? And what's that different world when you're obviously, you're being kept at a distance, but you're sneaking into the other world a little bit, right?
So it's interesting you say that because I don't think I realized I don't want to use the wrong word, but I don't think I realized how I grew up compared to other people until I was older. And by no means, like, we're not going to, it's not, there were definitely, prior to the Ambler Laura Gwinnett days, quite the struggling moments. But it's just, to me, what was odd to me, like I said, because we first moved to Hunt Club, and that was more of a community where there were more people, there were more Black people, where I met Lorraine, like I said. And Steve Johnson lived in Hunt Club, so all of us take the bus together and all of that. Yeah, we lived there for a short time, just until our house was being built. It was finished being built. So then we were like the third family to move into Wooded Pond, where Alyssa and all of us grew up. And to me, it was like, okay, I'm seeing people moving in. None of them look like me. What's going on here, Mom and Dad? What are we doing? Are we in the right place? Are we sure we can afford this? It's like those types of things that go through your head. And then I think there was maybe one other Black family, but they had two little girls who were like 5 and 4. So they couldn't be my friends, obviously, at that point. But it was different for me. I never felt, I will tell you, on Wooded Pond, I didn't feel like an outsider. At Wissahickon, I did. It's very odd. Alyssa and I became best friends. I still have the bracelet she gave me on graduation day. We became best friends, would ride to school together. I remember Clueless was our favorite movie. We would watch all the time, Clueless, because that was like us. But Matt Whitteman and I didn't hang out nearly as much. Jens and I became pretty close. But I didn't feel like an outsider at Wooded Pond. I felt like it was home. I truly, my parents had built a community around me with people around us that accepted us for who we were, because we know that that's not always the case as minorities ourselves. That's not always the case. But at Wissahickon, at school, I probably felt more like an outsider than I did at home. And I was really the only Black teenage girl on the street, on the block. So it didn't seem weird to me by any means. As I got older, I definitely appreciated and was grateful for those moments. But you also realize they're just moments. They don't define you. So yeah.
When you would go to, I don't know, Penn Lynn, Ambler, hang out, you looking around, you said you didn't feel very comfortable at Wissahickon. Did you feel comfort once you were maybe hanging out with friends?
Yeah, I did. I loved going to like visit Jessica and Penland. I did. My first boyfriend lived in Ambler, Miles.
Yeah, on my street, on the street I grew up on.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Miles and Keisha O'Rourke. You're absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah, South Chestnut.
There you go. I used to hang out over there a whole lot. I felt very comfortable. I think it was just at school, but it also have been the grades, and I wasn't really successful with when it came. I don't even know how I got into Penn State. I'll be honest with you, but I'm like, to this day, I think my parents paid somebody off. But, I just didn't feel like a successful student. I feel like a successful person through high school when I would be in those different environments, be it in Wooded Pond, Penland, even in Bluebell sometimes, but mostly in Ambler. I felt good then, but school just wasn't my thing.
I mean, do you think that's because of the mix of people? Like, is your first time now dealing really with like white people in school and Indians and Asians, and what is that for you learning for the first time of this social interaction?
It was difficult because I just didn't want to say or do the wrong thing. And, coming from where I come from, my family and people that we grew up with were jokesters. We may say things that might be offensive, but you're not offended because it's all in jokes and fun, and we're very sarcastic. And I just didn't want to come across that rude or annoying person. But I will say one of the main reasons that I wanted to go to HBCU. I actually wanted to. But I'll never forget, my father said, you need diversity in your life. You have to go to a school like Penn State. You need to understand what it's like to be around Indian people, Asian people, other Caucasian people. And I have to say, I fully agree. And I think that was the best decision of my life. Even though they moved away, it was a very different experience than I thought it would be. I mean, again, at Wissahickon, it's majority white, but you're inclined to find people who look like you. So the majority of my friend group that I hung out with in sports, outside, the bulk of them were still Black like myself. And so I was still, even if it was subconscious, putting myself in that position. But that's why I always appreciated Alyssa, because she really opened my eyes to a world that I was never used to prior to Wissahickon, prior to Lower Gwinnett. And it was just, her family was just the most welcoming family I've ever been around in my entire life. And it's just, I still cultivate in my mind that relationship because of what they brought to my life.
That's really cool. Yeah, that was like equivalent to like what my relationship was with Ray. To where we eventually ended up hanging out with Alyssa and like every Friday night, Saturday night, right? Yeah. Camaros in the driveway, and
there you go. Yeah, Ray and Jock.
Yeah, we're all hanging out in the basement or whatever, watching TV. How do you keep up with your friends if your parents are strict, you're not watching TV? Are you listening to music? Or, like, how are you? One of the biggest things for me with Black culture, right? I would have like a few Black friends that I would get to share in whatever I was watching, listening to, but it was very few and far between. And that was always my connection to Kelly Brailsford, to Alea, to Brandon Dees, to Hank, to Coop. For you, you're not really watching TV. I'm assuming your friends don't want to talk about what was on the 6 o'clock news. How are you keeping up with culture?
Thankfully, yeah. So radio was my life. I think I bought I had one thing my parents did. They didn't buy us many things we wanted, just what we needed. But one thing I did get was a big boombox. And I had like every CD. I think I still have like my Two Clothes, Lauryn Hill, like all those CDs still. Yes, CDs. And I listened to the radio a lot. Like I was that person that was calling in, trying to win tickets to things I know I would never be able to go to, but still trying to win tickets. So music really did become my life. And I did have an older brother who he and I hung out a good amount prior to him going or coming down here to go to Morehouse. So I spent a lot of time, which this new generation has no idea. I spent a lot of time outside too. And that was even prior to Wissahickon. I always loved being outside. I was definitely one of those, when the lights come on, that means I got to go home type kids. And right. I miss that. I will say in high school, it's like for them, it just switched. They were no longer as strict as they used to be. I didn't even have a curfew, but I also knew that I wasn't one to be going out all times of night anyway, because I had basketball practice the next morning for no reason, because I wasn't that good. but I and also in our house, when I say switch, it switched. I mean, we were allowed to drink with my parents, and that's not, don't worry, parents out there, but like they would say, we'd rather you have a drink here with us than be out there getting into an accident and hiding it.
Mhm.
And to this day, I think I maybe drank once outside of the house in high school, and that was at like a New Year's party. I had one beer and had my brother pick me up because I was like, I can't drive. I was perfectly fine, but I was like, I just don't want to drive. So the trust they instilled in me in high school, I didn't feel that prior to high school. So once high school hit, I was able to do a couple more things, not everything like I wanted to, but I had a little bit more freedom. So it shifted a little bit.
And it worked because you didn't go too far, even though this trust was laid down and the laws weren't really set in stone. You knew there were limits you couldn't go past.
Exactly. And I didn't for prom, I wanted to go home after prom. So I went home after prom. It just wasn't for me, being out hiding wasn't a necessity because I didn't have to. And that, I don't have children, but if I ever do, that's something I really do want to, instill in them as well. As there's a trust factor here. You've earned it. Don't mess it up.
Yeah. Were you, for social life, what was that like? I think it was a Leia talking about like a New Year's Eve party. Where you guys had no plans, and then you call like, oh, there's a house party, and I'm like, see, how come I never got to go to these house parties? I
think that was probably like one of two parties I went to, house parties I went to, and that's the same one I was just talking about, where I had a beer and I said, Brent, come pick us up. So social life it ended up being okay, but I also had a boyfriend through various boyfriends through high school. Mostly Miles and I were together for a good while. So that kind of ended up being my social life. To this day, my brother and my cousins still say, oh, we really loved Miles. I think he had the 3-door Saturn, and he would pick him up from soccer, and they just loved him. So my family ended up liking him. So he was able to be around a lot. So that ended up being my social life. Miles and Bianca were just kind of together. And then with sports, it was kind of hard to go out on Fridays because we knew we had to get up Saturday. So Saturday night we'd go up, but then I had church Sunday. So I wasn't really out late most nights. It was probably strategically planned that way by my parents, but I wasn't really out late a lot. If I was, it was like I'd stay at somebody, like I would stay at Holly's house or whoever it was, and then just go home the next day or go to practice. So I didn't really do as much as some of our other classmates did, I'm sure, as you know, but I was okay with that. In the long run, I really was okay with it.
Why didn't you do soccer in high school?
Because I wanted to be kind of with the cool kids, and I thought basketball was the cooler sport, so I stuck with basketball more. I did travel soccer with Colleen Farrell. There were a bunch of people on that team with me. I did travel soccer with them, but I also stopped doing that probably midway through high school too, because I wanted to put all my effort into basketball, because I just knew basketball was going to get me into college, and I just knew I was that great. And it seemed like, no, it didn't seem like it was evident at Wissahickon, basketball got a lot more notoriety, a lot more attention than soccer. I even played field hockey, and I was phenomenal at field hockey, but I stopped doing that too. So I really should have just stuck with the sports I was good at or better at, I should say.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think there's always a difference between how the guys' sports are covered and the girls' sports, right? And they always say the football brings in the money, quote unquote, to pay for everything else for the other sports. But I guess I always think of, like, I don't know, field hockey and lacrosse as like the girls' sports that I would always hear about, or like there would be the hoopla. I don't know if do you think am I misremembering that, or were the guys overshadowing of the girls' basketball team a little bit?
Absolutely. I think that, when you think about it, all the games were, they tried to do a good job of balancing who got to play in the night game on Fridays versus who didn't. But if you remember, if we played early, all the fans came in soon after our game ended or right as it was ended. If we played late, all the fans left soon after the boys' game ended or as it's about to end. So we didn't really get nearly as many people in the stands. I'm trying to remember, it's Jessica's cousin, Ashley. I think her name was Ashley too. Ashley Harrison? I forget. But she was another one of those phenomenal basketball players, and she had a big following. People would come to watch her, and then they'd come to watch Jessica. But we didn't get, I remember when I would play field hockey, I mean, it was parents around. That's all we would probably get with parents. Like nobody would come to that backfield to see us play, but the boys lacrosse team would get a lot of fans. And I just think that's a cultural thing too. That's just how it is in America. It's not like a Wissahickon thing. I wish that would be a shift, but I distinctly remember like, I can't stand when we have games after the boys because the stands would just be empty soon after that. They wouldn't be nearly as full, but we still have it down.
Yeah, it's like that for pro sports, right?
Even. Yes, exactly.
And college and all the way across.
Exactly. Yep.
What did you want to do like growing up as before like you're actually working towards it? If you were like a kid, like I wanted to be an astronaut. What did you want to? Yeah, but I was colorblind, so then you can't be an astronaut if you're colorblind. Yeah, you can't work in a space program. You can't tell your greens and your browns apart. They don't want you.
Yeah, it's kind of important.
What did you want to be?
I actually always said I wanted to be a lawyer. Even to this day, I wish I would have gone to law school instead of grad school. That was definitely, if I could redo anything in my life, it would be just having just gone straight to law school. So I work in HR now, and every time I interact with legal, I'm like, gosh, I just wish I went to law school. Like even if it was internal counsel type law, I didn't have to be litigation every day. I really wanted to go to law school, but they say it's never too late, but I'm 38, it's too late.
It's a lot of schooling to put in at this time of the
Exactly. I'm never going to school again. Never.
So then as you're going through Wissahickon, then what is I wanted to be a lawyer growing up, but what does that start to become as you're 16, 17, 18 and you have to start actually paying attention to this?
So like most kids, I knew there was work required in going and being a lawyer, but it wasn't until about those ages where I realized just how much work was required. And then I went to college and I didn't feel like I really had a purpose. Like I didn't really, even before going to college, I didn't think I'd get into college again because of my grades. And I was a strong C student, but that's not awesome. Let's just be real.
It doesn't stand out for anything.
Exactly.
It's average. C is average.
Exactly. So, but I was a strong C student. Don't forget that strong when you. And so I went to college and I went to the smaller campus first, and I was still thinking I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't really I didn't do any pre-law classes. I just kind of did the normal ones.
Right.
And then I got into HR because I took a course I originally was majoring in psychology. But psychology ended up just being too much theory, and I didn't want all that. I'm more definitive than that.
Okay.
And so I ended up going towards health and human development. And my father back in Connecticut knew the VP of HR at Travelers. So I started interning in HR at Travelers. And then after I graduated, I applied for their human development leadership program. I didn't get in, but they gave me a job in HR anyway, in recruiting. And so I just catapulted from there with HR.
What was your experience? I asked you just because, you talked about, your your mom or being the first like American in your family. And obviously, your brother's going to college, but what's that experience like when, you maybe don't have that, your parents don't have that experience to maybe tell you this is how it happens. No one in my family went to college.
Really?
None of my parents did it. My uncle is a PhD, but my parents didn't go. So like, it was very like, fumbling around of like you said, the workload, right? I didn't know what you had to do. I'm applying to everything, like literally like the day of the deadline. I'm half-assing what I'm writing. I've got nothing really to show for it on my transcript, except for musicals. Jenny Martin also talked about, her problems with trying to figure out school and what to do, and going to like her boyfriend's parents, Pat Emery's parents, and like asking for advice because they were very zoned in, but they're zoned in on Pat, not on who she is and what's good for her. So what's helping you kind of figure out how to navigate through college or get to college?
I will tell you, I don't remember, I can't remember most of my teachers' names, but we had a counselor in high school. I remember it was one of the first areas when you first walk into the front door. And she was really a big portion of me getting through the essays, finding out how to apply to colleges, all of that. I leaned on her a lot more than I probably should have, but to me, that's what she's there for.
That's their job. Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say my father went to University of Cincinnati, and so he understood what the process was. But the thing about him was, I'll tell you my experiences, but I'm not going to dictate or walk through yours with you, if that makes sense. And what he means is you got to put in the work. You got to do this. And I fully understand that, but sometimes you're kind of just like, just give me a couple answers. I need just kind of help me along the way if you can. So the counselor kind of filled in a lot of those gaps for me. And my mom was really instrumental. My mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mom at that point. And it was, to me, it was a burden, but I understood later what she would, did you finish your essay? Okay, let me read it. Because she would have been, if she had gone to college, she wanted to be an English major. So that was a blessing and a curse, as you can imagine. I'm like, oh God. So every single thing was crucified when it came to her, when you would give it to her, but it ended up working in my favor because I was never the best writer, and she was very good at that. So I did have that. I had many angles that I would pull from to help me get to that point.
I definitely didn't use our guidance counselor enough at all. It was one of those, like, you only go when you have the everyone's got the meeting, right? You get like you find out you have to have a meeting because everyone's having a meeting. You have to go during sixth period. And you're just like, I don't even know where this place is.
You know, I was like at her office, ma'am, do you have a few minutes? Thank you.
But, you know, that was one of the biggest things that I learned, right, wearing Temple gear today. But like one of the biggest things I learned not until I got to Temple was that you gotta there might be lots of opportunities and information available to you, but you don't know until you ask. I never, ever, ever knew how to ask until I was almost done Temple. And then you start asking people and people help you and you go, oh, wow, I could have had this for years and years and years. But so that's a great example. Like, you're asking your guidance counselor, actually going. And when people see that you're willing to, that's why I say, like, yeah, it's her job. You know how many people she probably had that like never, ever went to her. And you're like actually put in that work. That's why people want to be teachers, right? To help people who want it.
And she wasn't standoffish. She was very helpful. And I think that she really, to your point, was appreciative that somebody was actually asking for her help. It wasn't just like, my parents tell me I have to come see you. What do I have to do? Just say I came here. Like, you know what I mean? So I'll never forget just how, I think between her and my mom is what got me to applying. Like, I applied to Kutztown. My dad said only in-state schools, because we're not paying for anything out of state. And then I just kind of decided on Penn State. I was kind of forced into it, but it worked out.
Did you have a favorite teacher in Wissahickon?
He actually wasn't my teacher, but he was just one of the coolest. I'm gonna call him a cool cat because he's an old head, because we used to call him a cool cat. Mr. Dixon, the shop teacher. He was just like the coolest person in the world. And I don't remember many teachers' names, but I'll never forget his name. Jessica and I would like literally sneak to his classes instead of our classes, just to hang out with him and like just see him in action. I actually ended up taking shop one year with, was it Billy Stout? I think it was with Billy, yeah. And I still have the model or whatever the thing is that I built, but he was just, what I liked about Mr. Dixon was he didn't treat us like high school students. He treated us like young adults that are now entrancing into college. And we needed somebody who wasn't judging us, who wasn't just rigid. And he was just really, I think about him a lot. I don't know where he is or what he's doing, but I think about Mr. Dixon a lot.
He's still around.
He was just a very cool, he is? Well, if you see him, please tell him I say hi.
If I remember correctly, he may be in the middle school now, but I think he's still in the district. I know he's on Facebook. He's definitely someone I want to try and talk to.
Yes, like he was just the coolest teacher because he just let us be young adults. He wasn't judgmental. He would tell us about his experiences. I mean, people would take his class just to like soak up like a sponge from him. And that was a vital part of my high school tenure, I guess you could say.
I literally knew you were going to say Mr. Dixon, the first adjective you said. I was like, oh, this is going to be Mr. Dixon. I would love to get in touch with him and just see how he's doing. Like, he was just a cool person, man. Yeah, and he like you said, young adults, he wasn't rigid. He didn't have kind
Yeah.
of these I never had Mr. Dixon. The
Mm-mm.
one my one interaction with Mr. Dixon was I got in a fight senior year a week before graduation. And
Oh, wow.
Mr. Dixon is the one that pulled me off of the kid. But at the time, I
Whoa.
didn't
You
know.
got into a fight?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. See, it
I
was a.
find that hard to believe, but if you say so.
Did I not seem like a fighter?
No, I mean, well, I don't know that any of us were really fighting.
Or did I not seem tough enough?
No, I just didn't think that you would get into it. Like you seem like you were a good kid. Now, not that getting because I was a fighter, but not that you can't be a good kid. I just felt you were above fighting. If that makes sense.
So you know what's funny is that I think because you only knew me probably from like seventh, whenever I met you like in a pod,
Yeah.
eighth grade, maybe it
Mhm.
wasn't until ninth, but middle school I always got in fights. I got like
Really?
I got three suspensions, I think, in seventh grade. Um, and then like I said, I started learning a little bit more, and then it's like, all right, like I'm 10th grade, I'm not getting in fights, but then 12th grade was like a break from that of like, oh, line got crossed. And so I thought I was actually getting jumped during the
Oh,
fight. I'm like, because I see someone just running up to the side and they grab me and they're holding me. So now I'm kicking the kid in the face because my hands are being
yep.
held. And all of a sudden I
Mhm.
can't breathe and I'm being put in a chokehold. And I'm like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And it's Mr. Dixon who's got me in like a Navy SEAL chokehold. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm like, I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm cool. So I'm sitting in Mr. Madden's office with my mom, and Mr. Dixon
Yes, right.
comes and finds me. And he comes in front of my mom and he goes, I'm really sorry I did that. But that kid could not defend himself. I had to make you stop. It's not, that's just
You get a
so,
moment with that kid, yeah.
but that's my cross with Mr. Dixon. But just he had that
Mhm.
personality. There were a few, Miss Stout, a few others, I think like Mr. Brody, that people kind of were able, you were able to maybe cross a line, but you
Yeah,
didn't disrespect them.
yeah, yep. Yeah, I don't, as you're saying names, it's coming back to me, but I don't remember anybody's name. I remember the teacher we had in seventh grade. She was on the, is it Mrs. J, Mrs. Parker? Was it
Miss
Mrs.
Parker.
Parker?
Yeah.
I remember her. I remember her. And I really liked her. I felt that a lot of the students didn't treat her appropriately, but I always liked Mrs. Parker. She was just a strong woman, boy, I tell you. I
So we
always
had
liked
that.
her. So
So we had seventh grade together then.
yes, we
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely did. Yeah.
7B.
Yes, it was 7B. You're right. So yeah, there you go. So Mrs. Parker, Mr. Dixon. I can't remember many other names. When you were running them off, I was like, oh yeah, we did have that teacher, but not many others I can remember.
Did you have a
Mm-mm.
favorite class? Something that you were like really, you said your mom wanted to be an English teacher, was English.
Yeah. Anything that involved sports, because I was a huge tomboy. I mean,
So
I
Jim.
didn't wear gym, absolutely gym, or I'm so serious. Um, yeah, I was a huge tomboy. Like my mom had to force me to go to prom because I didn't even like to wear dresses. I did not want to go to prom. I didn't want to have any birthday parties. So she didn't get the true like girly experience with me as her daughter until after college. I didn't start wearing dresses until after college, voluntarily until
Mm-hmm.
after college.
Yeah.
So anything that involved sports or not being in front of a book, I was ready for it.
That's interesting. You say you never wore a dress. Instantly, what popped in my mind was Love and Basketball, where right she comes to they say, "Damn, I didn't know Nike made dresses."
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yep. But I was never the young girl who was in the kitchen with her mom, her Jamaican mom, who's making this food. Obviously, it's amazing food. I was the young girl who was outside doing foot races with the boys, and my brother was betting against it. They couldn't beat me. Like that was me outside.
Mm.
um. So yeah, I was definitely. I don't think my tomboyness showed as much in high school as it did when I was much younger because I felt like I didn't feel as comfortable being that rowdy little girl who was a tomboy as much in high school because it's kind of like I'm looking at the many other girls who are they're into boys and they're into dresses and they're into just many things I wasn't into and I'm like, oh, maybe that's why nobody's talking to me because I'm not into these things. But then things changed. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you did date in high school, wasn't like you
Mhm.
like you didn't date. Was it you mentioned Miles, like prior to like really dating, was it like just a complete drought? And were you looking out? Because you're obviously you're I looked at Wissahickon as pretty advanced. So I would
Yeah.
look at like seventh, eighth grade. You would hear stories at that point were 12, 13, 14, and you would hear stories about the weekend. And then especially once we got to high school. So for me, who
Mhm.
I didn't date at all the entire time. So for you who maybe didn't start, and I don't think that, I think a lot of people started in high school, but for you kind of
Yeah.
leading up to that point, were you feeling like you're behind the pack in every way? Because you're mentioning you're a tomboy and you're like, oh, maybe that's why. Is that like, are you well aware of like everyone else's kind of like romance world happening? I don't know what the
The
right
romance
description.
world, as you know, some of them
Sexual
are having children
exploits.
already. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. As you know, some of them are having children already. And I didn't feel like our grade, the guys in our grade really showed me much attention, but I did feel like Miles was a grade above me.
Mhm.
So when I went to high school, it did seem, yeah. So I guess you could. I didn't really date, and I had crushes in middle school, but I didn't date anyone probably because I wasn't allowed to. But Miles wasn't until 11th grade. So
Okay.
yeah, I guess so. Like I had a short stint with another guy named Andre, but that didn't last long. So
Did your friends date?
well, Alyssa and Josh started dating at the age of
Right.
like 2. So, you know.
And then they got married at 16. So
Exactly. There you go. Um, I had a lot of different friend groups, and I would probably say within them, yeah, a good amount of them did. Yeah, I'd say they did. Now, it may not have been guys at our school or girls at our school, but they were, yeah.
sure, yeah. Yeah, it was for me, like none of my friends did. Ray didn't date, Scott didn't date. Josh, when he finally came to Wissahickon and started dating the friend in our actual group, it's like, oh wow, like all right, that was easy. And so then that was the only friend that we really had dating anyone. And like the only time that I would be the quote unquote like third wheel or fifth wheel or whatever it was,
Mhm.
we were pulling around in the Camaro at the time. Um so
So
for
why
me,
didn't you date?
I was what's the right word? Shy, but I was afraid of being vulnerable, I think.
Yeah.
So while I was shy, I would meet it with aggression. And I think I kept that like picking on girls, like schoolyard
Hmm.
style. That was my style of obviously listen to the podcast. I had a million crushes, but I never, like my thing would just be like try and like make people laugh. But that could
Yeah.
go either way, right? I might approach it wrong. And so I just never
Mhm.
put myself in a pocket to ever even like be really friendly with her. Alyssa was like really the only girl that I was friends with, that I hung
Yeah.
out with.
Mhm.
Jess Lauer. Those are
Yeah.
like the
Yep.
only
I
two
remember her.
people that I like hung out with, went to their houses, talked to them on the
Hmm.
phone. Those are the only two girls, probably until like my second year of college.
Wow.
Like it,
Wow.
and it wasn't
I
even
didn't realize
until
that.
yeah, and it wasn't even until like my senior year that I would even really like talk to girls in school
Mhm.
in a friendly way. All
Hmm.
of my interaction with girls would maybe like I did chorus and musicals.
Hmm.
And so like
Yep.
I would interact with girls in that way, but I never hung out, never did anything. I think it was just, I don't know. I think that's, which I think is normal. I just never learned how to conquer it in high school.
Yeah. Yep. I didn't realize that. Okay.
I also was really I was really self-conscious about like how to date. I didn't know how to do it. I worked at Wawa. I worked like 20
I
hours.
miss Wawa. Oh,
Yeah,
I wish I had a Wawa here.
I worked like 20 hours a week at Wawa. I had 7 a.m. I worked 7 a.m. on the weekend. So like being out on late on a
Wow.
Friday was not very typical for me, even if I was just hanging out
Hmm.
with friends. And I didn't know where you would take people for dates. None of my friends
Hmm.
dated. Josh and Alyssa hung out like at their houses.
Yeah,
So
they did. Yep.
yeah, and I never knew like where would I take a girl. Wouldn't have a clue what to say to like, hey, do you want to go do blank? I would still go to
Hmm.
McDonald's and we would go to Friendly and like I just didn't know. That's one of the things I often ask people is like, where did you go for dates? What did you do?
I don't remember. I think I was, if I was Yeah, I don't know that I really went places for dates because I mean, how much can you really do at 15, 16 years old?
Right. The
Don't have a
movies.
car. I didn't have a license until I was 18. So, yeah, no, I think it was just more so if the parents were comfortable with it, you hung out at their houses or other friends' houses with the guy or the girl. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't figure that all out. So that was all. And I never went to dances. So even like, trying to spark up something for a dance and, oh, she was my date for this. Never did any of that. I hated dressing up. I was so self-conscious.
I mean, the only time I went with a date was prom and semi-form. I think I went to one semi-formal and then when I was 11th grade prom, and then 12th grade I went to prom. The regular dances, it would just be like a group of girls going together. Like it was never, oh, I'm going with my boo. Like no, it's
Mm-hmm.
me, Jessica, or it's me and Alyssa. It's just different. Me and Alea,
Mm-hmm.
Kelly. It's just different groups of us would go and we'd go home. So yeah.
Did you go to the football games on Friday nights?
I did. I did. I mean, we were already at the school anyway, because from other sports. But yeah, I did go to those sometimes. I don't think I went to a lot or like all of them. But yeah, I did go to some of them.
Yeah, I never went to those either.
Really?
Yeah.
Brad, what were you doing in high school?
I would work a lot of times Friday nights too after work. Like I would work,
Mhm.
7 to 11 or whatever, or 5 to 11 or 3, right? Yeah, 3 to 11 whenever we would get out.
Mhm.
So I would do that a lot. And yeah, I just wasn't into it. And you know what else? I was not a big sports guy outside of basketball. Wasn't very
Okay.
into I probably barely knew rules to football back then. It
Mhm.
was more of like, oh, are the Eagles on? Are we watching? Okay, like remember my parents got divorced at 7th grade. I stopped talking to my dad like by the time I was like
Oh,
in high school, so I never had
yeah.
like that ultra macho
Yeah.
come on, let's watch
Mhm.
sports. Really, basketball was like my favorite sport, was what I played growing up.
Yep.
You play everything, but then you suck at the rest and you start trying to funnel it. So basketball was like the only thing I played recreationally as a kid, past the time I was like
Uh-huh.
11. It was the only thing I understood. So that's what I would watch, Sixers, but nothing else. So football going. And I was so practical. Oh,
Mhm.
you want to go to the game? I don't like football. I don't want to go. And it's like not realizing it's the social thing. Like, no,
It's
you
the social,
go.
yeah.
Yeah, we stand
Mhm.
around, we talk. And I was like, I don't know, I got 3 friends. What am I doing? Who am I talking to?
It's definitely the social aspect of it. And you said basketball, it reminded me of when you sent me that message, maybe Instagram, because I'm not really on Facebook. When you saw me on the Kiss Cam when I went there with went to one of the what's the team Hawks games.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did he see me on this? And I was like, oh
Yeah.
well, it is televised.
Yeah. So
So
this is great. So I'm sitting watching a random Atlanta Hawks game, and I'm watching like the league pass feed, which is the feed from the arena. So you get to see everything that
okay.
happens in arena on the big screen. And you're
Mm-hmm.
hearing the MC like, all right, we're gonna throw out some t-shirts and all that stuff. And then at some point they're like, all right, we're going to the kiss cam. And they're just showing different people. And then all of a sudden, front row, there's Bianca with this guy. And the guy was like one of those comical, like he realizes and then he just goes in for it. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I got it. And I hadn't talked to you in a long time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I know I got her on Instagram somewhere. I gotta find her. Like, are you at this Hawks game? This is going out everywhere.
Funniest things, I'm like, I forgot that I was at the game. I was like, what is he? Oh yeah, I was at the game.
Yeah, that
Oh
made it
my
worth it.
god,
That
that
made it
was
worth it watching those weird feeds all the time. It's like you never know who's gonna be there.
yeah, it was just the randomest thing ever.
But those would be like my weekends, my Friday nights, my Saturday nights would be like, hanging out with like Scott Ritter,
Mhm.
listening to music, watching a Sixers game, eating buffalo wings, drinking soda. That would be like a Friday, a Saturday night. Maybe the
Mhm.
only other thing that we would do would be go hang out with Josh and Alyssa and,
Yeah.
go riding around. I also didn't get my license, I think, until my senior year.
Mhm. Yep.
I was a very late bloomer with that too. Is that
I
weird for
wasn't
you?
allowed to.
Oh,
Yeah, if we had C's, you couldn't get your license in. Being a strong C student, I had C's. So
yeah.
But they said when you turn 18, you're an adult. We can't tell you not, you can't anymore. So literally the week I turned 18, I got my license.
And then where'd you get the car?
I didn't have a car. I actually
You
didn't
borrowed.
have my own car. Yeah, I didn't have my own car until I graduated college. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it would be kind of messed up if C student, you're not allowed to get your license, then you're a grown up, but we're also going to buy you a car to go with it.
No, they didn't. No, there was no, I drove their cars once I got my license.
So what, you mentioned music, you mentioned all your
Mhm.
CDs. Did you have a favorite album, artist
Um,
from high school?
I don't know. I'd probably say I really did like Next. I liked Next a lot. I liked their songs. Didn't know what they were talking about till after high school, obviously. But I think Next may have been part of middle school too. But I don't remember. But I loved Lauryn Hill's CD. I still have that one. Aaliyah, of course.
Mm.
Probably those three I just ran. I ran through the most.
That's a pretty good, it's well, Next is like very 90s, like very,
Yes. Yes.
Aaliyah and Lauryn Hill are icons.
Mhm.
And then you go
Yes.
Next, it's like the Boner song.
Yes, I know it's so bad. It's so bad. But we didn't know what they were. I didn't. I didn't know what they were saying then. I just loved the beat. And I was like, oh yeah, we're too close. I don't know too close to, but we're just going. And as I got older, I was like, oh, I used to sing that song around my parents. They know what they meant.
So you're right. I always rode, never drove, and I never had my license. So unless I was with friends, I was
Mhm.
always in the passenger seat with my mom, and I controlled the
Mhm.
radio, right? So we're always
Yep.
listening. We're always listening to Philly 103.9 or Power
Yep.
99.
Mhm.
And I remember, was it it might have been these are the times, Drew Hill, but there's a
Mhm.
there's a verse when I think Cisco says, tear you up in little pieces, swallow you like Reese's Pieces. Come on, girl, you know what I mean. And my mom goes, ew, swallow you like Reese's Pieces.
You're in high school?
Yeah, yeah.
That
And
is
like,
hilarious,
and at
Brad.
that point, like that was the first time I was like, oh, I didn't even realize this shit was like.
But shout out to your mom for being so cool about it. Ooh, what?
So when you're gearing up to go to Penn State,
Mhm.
what's you're leaving, you've been here now. Do you consider this your home? Did you consider Hartford your home? Did you feel any type of like a split?
It's definitely a split. When people ask me where I'm from, I say Hartford. I think a big reason why I don't talk about Wissahickon as much is because I'm so disconnected from everybody at Wissahickon. Like, I don't know. Lorraine and I are still very good friends. I mean, she's lived in Atlanta for a long time. She's no longer here. I think she's going to come back soon, though. So we're still very good friends. But I couldn't tell you, besides liking a picture, oh, that's a pretty picture, or like a comment on Instagram. I don't know that I'm friends with anybody from Wissahickon. It's sad, I know. But I think that's mainly because I left right after we graduated. So I wasn't around anybody anymore.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone back to Wissahickon since we graduated. Well, I went back for Alyssa's wedding,
Mhm.
but that was it. I mean, even Alyssa and I don't talk nearly as much as we used to, obviously, in high school. But so it wasn't really yeah, I'm not really connected to anybody at Wissahickon anymore.
Did you, if you hadn't gone back afterwards, would you have still felt that way? Like you got some adult time up there, would you have still felt that way, do you think?
About
About
Wissahickon right
Hartford?
now.
About Hartford, because you went
Oh,
back, because you ended up going back, right, to Connecticut.
yes, I ended up going back and then living there for 3 years after I graduated. But I'd probably say because it's where I'm, and it's not like I was born there and moved a year after I was born. I spent 12 years of my
Right.
life um, living there, and a good amount of my family is still there. I have a really good friend group still there. So I definitely always claim it as home. But I think if I had more of a connection to our class or even, other Wissahickon students, I I would definitely claim, Wissahickon, Ambler, Lower Gwinnett more.
That's interesting. So then when you're going to Penn State, is there any like feeling of I'm leaving friends, I'm leaving this that
Mhm.
you cultivate? So you are at least feeling like, okay, this is like I've grown up here in my
Oh yeah,
adult.
absolutely. The hard part was after graduation, all of you guys got to be around each other for the whole summer. I left a week after we walked across the stage. So I didn't get to be around everybody. I didn't get to gear up and go to college. And all right, I'm now leaving. I'll see you when I come home for fall break or Thanksgiving. It was always shuffling back to Connecticut. So I think if I had that, I would still have more of a connection to everybody or the Wissahickon itself. But it didn't even dawn on me until probably earlier this year. I was like, I don't think I'm friends, like legit friends with anybody from high school and middle school. Like we're on Instagram, but
yeah,
that's not really friendship.
That's interesting because the whole reason why I started this podcast because I kept running into so many people from Wissahickon out on the streets, just all the time, and it's like I got to do something with this energy besides, hey, how you doing? How you been? I know you said you didn't watch TV, but did you have a favorite movie in high school?
I don't know that I did have a favorite movie in high school. I liked Clueless.
Yeah.
But I was more into like the TV shows themselves. The TGIF was like, that was my thing. We could watch as much TV as we wanted on the weekends. So Family Matters, Hang with Mr. Cooper, Step by Step, like all those. I lived for Friday if I could be home. Exactly. If I could be home and not have to be at, sports and things like that. Of course, Chris McLaughlin, was that his name? He was next to me in the yearbook. Brianna and Chris had the same last name, but they weren't.
Chris McQuaid.
McQuaid, thank you. And he and I used to recite the Fresh Prince anthem like all the time. Like it was the coolest thing. I had the biggest crush on him like ever in life. But
he had the Justin Timberlake look.
He did. He did. I didn't think about that. I was just like, I'm going to be Bianca McQuaid one day.
Oh my God, that's great.
I don't know why, but I was just so in love with him. But we used to recite the Fresh Prince anthem, and it was just like the coolest thing that this, white kid knows the Fresh Prince anthem. It was like, oh, that's pretty cool. All right.
Fresh Prince was pretty. I remember when the episode when he got shot at the ATM.
Yeah.
And it was like a 2-parter, and we're like, yo, next week.
Could not wait. Like it was as if we were part of that family.
An appointment viewing. We didn't have DVRs, like unless you were gonna you had to actually watch it, and nothing like reran until the summer, maybe if you were lucky. So like you had to watch it, or if you had a tape, you could tape it, but you usually had to watch it.
Oh yeah, you definitely had to, because there wasn't like a lot of syndication or reruns, and
not of shows that were actually on the air. Like now it's like a show gets 50 episodes in, and now they start getting syndicated while they're still actually running new episodes. But that never happened. The show had to be canceled or off the air to start running.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like we made it a point that was like our family show. TGIF, my older brother and I would kind of be in and out with that one, but Fresh Prince, was it Monday? I think they came on Mondays.
Yeah, Mondays. Right?
Yeah, that we made it a point of, that was like the family time that we all sat down and watched it, and then you went about your business.
Yeah. I love that show. Yeah, I love that show. I'll still watch it. That's one of the few shows. Boy Meets World's is like that too, where I can watch it and I don't roll my eyes. It's like, it's still funny. I go, this is really good.
Yeah, I love it. And then they had Girl Meets World. I never really got into that one as much.
I didn't try that one.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I didn't try that one.
I didn't even try.
Yeah. I don't want to ruin it in my head of how good it all was.
Good. You're absolutely right.
Well, you mentioned the yearbook.
Oh gosh, are we bringing it out?
We're gonna bring it out. This is where we see what you set your legacy as with your. You must.
I don't even remember. Couldn't even tell you where my yearbooks are. None of that.
This is you.
Oh my gosh, when I had all my hair. Oh, Stefania, that was my girl too. Yep.
I mean, we're part of the dimple gang.
Yes. Yep. I feel like as I've gotten older and my face has gotten fatter, they're not as prevalent, but I'm hanging on to them.
That's why I hide it with the beard now, so that like for years and years now, people still just think that they look the same. But if I shave, you just go, oh wow, it's a little flatter than they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I did not like having dimples growing up. I love it now, but I could not stand it. Yeah. Because people would tease me, oh, you have weak face and all they put their fingers. I'm like, I can't stand this. But
that's
as I got older, I was like, this is like actually really unique. I like this. Like people would literally tease me about it, but then I was like, it's because they want dimples. Duh.
Yeah, I grew up like being taught that like dimples were like a sign of like, you know, attractiveness, or, you know, like that's good looking people have dimples. And that was like my family would always like,
Brad, see?
yeah, like, ooh, look at you with those dimples. Did you got a third one over there? Okay.
He's so silly.
So, all right, we've got some field hockey and for ninth grade, basketball 9 through 12, track and field 9 and 10. You ran a little bit, or did you do activities?
I did
the field part. Did you do the field part?
I did javelin, shot put. I held the record at West Higgins for a little bit for javelin, I think actually. And then I was not a distancer. I could do 200, 100. That was all you're gonna get from me, because to this day I still cannot do distance. But yeah. I was another area where Jessica just ran circles around me, but I'm not bitter by any means.
I was just gonna ask, is at what point did Jess crush your dreams in that too?
Like in middle school. I was so used to being like the all-around athlete, and I come to Wissahickon and I'm just like, well, who does she think she is? Oh, that's who she is. Okay, yep, she got it. You keep on, sister.
But on day one, it's like, you're doing this sport too?
Exactly. It's like, I thought I was getting away from you. Can I be the best for once, please?
Give me the 100.
Went to Kent State, like on a scholarship. I'm like, what? She was phenomenal.
It's funny. Someone was listening to that episode recently and was like, I love how she's like very modest. And she's like, you know, I wasn't the best and all that. It's like, right then, like Kent State scholarship. What? Like, you just go, right.
She's lying.
Oh. AAAC 10 and 11.
What's that?
Exactly. I mean, it's
I have no idea.
Anytime I see a bunch of A's, I automatically start going African American something
club committee
something.
Did we have anything like that? I don't even know. Is that my profile?
That's you. That is you. You got Key Club in here for 12th grade.
No, I don't. What is Key Club?
People have talked about it, but it's always like a one-off thing. I can't remember exactly. It's nothing that, like, I know there was Key Club and there was Interact Club, and those were like very ambiguous, but Interact Club was like working with kids in the inner city.
So that was probably my attempt to get more credits on my transcript for college, because I don't know what Key Club is.
in 12th grade, that makes sense. Listen, I'm gonna do soccer, I'm gonna do Key Club, just add it to my transcript. Send it off.
Check all the boxes.
When you did soccer in 12th grade, I know you said you wished you had stuck with it. Did you, you know, we joked about like, you know, Jess kind of showing you up in other sports. Did you feel like you belonged in soccer? Like you had something there? Yeah, you still had it.
Yeah, soccer was, I mean, like I said, I was the only girl on the boys team. That's how good I was before we moved. And I just like, I was always the fastest, and I shined on the soccer field. I really did.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have stuck with it. I absolutely do. But, you know, maybe next time.
You said you're never going back to school, so that's it.
No, that's it. I'm never going. I don't ever want to read another. I don't even like reading emails anymore. So.
Talk to text.
Exactly.
Your quote is, respect is contagious. Give it, got it. Anonymous.
That was my dad. Yep.
Oh.
My dad would actually say that. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Thanks, family, especially parents who go the extra mile. Brent, thanks for always being there. Blake, your time's coming. True friends. Alyssa. NH.
I don't know what that is.
I did look to see if there was anyone with an NH in our thing, and I couldn't find one. And you have an AB, which is Alea Bradshaw, right?
Alea Bradshaw, yeah. NH. I don't know what that is. Alea definitely was Alea Bradshaw, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a boyfriend in 12th grade? A different boyfriend in 12th grade?
His initials weren't NH.
And then you have I miss you, grandpa. So a shout out to your grandfather.
Yeah, he passed when we were in high school.
Hmm. Was your family in Hartford while you were here? Well, when you were in school, was your rest of your family up
When I
in
was
Hart?
in, yeah.
And
When I went to college, they had already moved back. Yeah.
okay. But I mean like your overall family. You had mentioned just like kind of,
Oh,
did you have like a
no.
larger family that was up there when you just mentioned like being around like Jamaicans and everything up there? Was it
Yeah. So the majority of the people on my mom's side, I mean, up until recently, a lot of them were still in Jamaica, but my grandmother and my uncles, they were all in Georgia and Florida. On my dad's side, he had a good amount of his parents. He had some cousins, his sisters. They were in Connecticut still, so it was nobody was in Pennsylvania pretty much. Well, he had a brother in Pennsylvania for a while, but that was it.
wow? So did you travel for
Mm-hmm.
all your holidays and stuff, or did you
Yeah, we
stay?
still went. I mean, I went. We didn't change my orthodontist. We didn't change our doctors. Really, we still drove back and forth for certain doctors. Yeah, so we still went back a
Wow.
good amount. Mm-hmm.
So that
Yep.
really does make sense why that was your home more than anything.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm still trying to think what would have NH been?
NH.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that one. It's probably not
Yes.
gonna come to me, but I'll think about it.
Trying to think like a Nicole or a Natalie.
There was a Nicole out, but that was Nicole Murphy. She lived in Penland too. That was Nicole
Okay.
Murphy. But no, I don't. I have no idea. I have to think
Or
about
a
that one. I'll get back to
Nicholas,
you.
a Nat or a Nicholas. NH, if you're out there.
Oh. Is
NH,
it?
tweet us, DM us.
Yes, please do. That's too funny. What was your quote?
I don't think I had one. Mine was horrible. Mine was very, so I had real I don't know, like I had problems with trying to feel like I was too cool or like coming off as too cool, and so I would often underplay stuff, and I feel like I wouldn't rise to the occasion of which the occasion was,
Mm-hmm.
what was necessary for the occasion. So I come in with like, well, I finally made it and it couldn't feel better. Like I'm giving like a keynote speech or something. I want to thank everyone that helped me along the way. Special thanks to my mom. I guess that's all there is to say.
That is not.
Because
Oh my
because
gosh.
in my head, literally what goes through my head is like, oh man, people are gonna fucking make fun of me if I put a stupid quote or a
Oh.
dumb rap lyric, or like I was always trying to portray. I was looking for that moment to be portrayed as like acceptable, cool, something like that. And like that,
Yeah.
I never had that, but I didn't know everyone else was trying to do that too.
Yeah, that's all you're doing in middle school and high school. That's literally you're putting on a front for everybody. You almost convince yourself sometimes that this is really you and it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like you were saying, like we're just such kids. It's like that with everything. And I looked
Mm-hmm.
at everyone, girls, the cool kids and the cool guys, the school nerds who got good grades. I looked at all of them as like, they've got it figured out.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
never knew they didn't have it figured out until years later. You get some more life experience and you just go, oh, they didn't
Mm-hmm.
know. They were just lucky. They guessed, they prepped, they actually put in the work,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yep.
It took me a long time to realize that. And then like once that stopped becoming a thing where it's like, oh, I need to impress or I need to put on airs, like, oh, no one else here is doing that. I can relax.
Mm-hmm.
It took me becoming an adult to get that comfortable.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I thought that there were a lot of kids in our high school in particular. I was just like, it just seems like it comes so easy to them and everything just handed to them. Why is it not like that for me? But it wasn't. They were just working very hard. And you don't really realize that until later. It's like, it's everybody has their cross to bear, and that was theirs.
Yeah, you talk about like C's and I was like the same way. I was like a CB student, and you talk about like we talked about Jess and how good she
Mhm.
was, and I
And
think
she was
about,
good in school too. I'm like, how are you doing? Like, how are you like a phenomenal in everything?
but then when I talked to her and for the show, and she talked about practice and what she would put
Yes.
into that, and or I talked to Lizzie Black who talked about
Yes.
realizing that she had a learning disorder, and as she's like
Oh,
trying to become a doctor, that she had
wow.
ADD or ADHD. I can't remember which, but that was a real barrier for her at that point. But it
Hmm.
wasn't until then. And it's like, well, then what were you doing? Like, but you were Lizzie Black. You were getting all these grades. You were going to, you know what I mean? Like, what did you, well, I studied a lot. Like when my brother was still going to sleep, I was still trying to study. And those are the things I never, ever, ever did. I never lost sleep studying. Studying wasn't a regular, a daily, nightly occurrence on my schedule. It was it was internet, music, watching basketball, wrestling. Like at no point was it better go through this book and just kind of look over what we learned today. I think I never did that until the test.
I was the same way. It's like, nah, I'm just gonna go to bed. It's fine.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna pass through anyway. What does it matter?
Yeah, test today. Let me look real quick. Let's see here. Right. And it was all memorization.
Like, yeah, and the teacher's like, I told you this 2 weeks ago. You probably did, but I still haven't studied. So
Sixers went 10-0. What could I say? Things are really popping over here at my house every night. A lot of buffalo wings.
Exactly. You and Scott, right?
Yeah. Oh, Wings to Go used to have a thing when the Sixers or the Flyers play, you could get like 50 wings for $20. And for people now, I mean, nothing makes you feel older than realizing than hearing a price like that. When like you look at like gas prices or like chicken wing prices are fucking crazy now. It's like $1.50 for a buffalo wing. Imagine paying like 50 cents for a wing.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. But I was going to tell you, you mentioned Lizzie Black, and I fun fact is that she was, I believe I played field hockey with her too. She was very good at field hockey. I think it was field hockey. Yeah. But she had the twin brother, Andy. Maybe?
Yeah.
Andy. And then the two older brothers, maybe even three older brothers, but it was at least two older brothers.
Yeah.
And I remember always being jealous and being like, I wish I had all those brothers. I wish I had a twin, because they just seemed like such a close knit family, fun family. And her brothers would always, they watch her play. And it was just like, oh, I always wish I had it. Like I was always so jealous of that, because her and Andy, they seem close to me as well. A lot of times siblings aren't, especially twins, they're not opposite sex twins, they're not always close. And it's like, I really wish I had that. I was so jealous of her.
Yeah, she talked about like almost having like a built-in best friend.
Yeah.
And especially because she wasn't as I think she didn't look at herself as like as cool kid or as outgoing. Andy was a lot more, I think she thought, like in the crew, but they were sisters. They shared friends, even if she didn't do as much as he. And so she always had an outlet or a place to go. But she was also the girl. She was also the only girl.
The only girl, yeah.
Yeah, the only girl. And so for sports and all that stuff, it was like, your brothers, you have to play with your brothers, or, your brothers have to play girl sport with you to help you practice at home. And but then
he was really good.
But flip side, Pat Novak, who had a twin brother, Tom, they did not get along as well growing up.
Oh, really?
Now they're super close. They actually, Pat and Tom live in the same house with Tom's whole family and stuff. Pat's like the cool uncle in there in the house. So now they're super, super close, but it didn't start like that. Like you said, like it's not always, that's how they were growing up. Not as close.
Yep.
So it could have gone either way for you.
This is very true. You're absolutely right. I just always wanted a sibling closer to my age, but I loved their relationship, and I would, I wish I had that. And, but everybody's different.
I was an only child, and at times I think I wish I had a brother or sister, but then I would see like when Ray would fight with his sister Kim, and I would just come home and go, thank God I don't have to deal with that. I would never be able to handle that.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Imagine being the parent in the middle of that. They be doing a Mr. Dixon every day, some parents. Like, all right, chokehold time, let's go.
Stop fighting.
Yep. That was my parents, and I had brothers, so yeah, I can't imagine.
Right, you said you were tough back in your day starting out, so.
Yeah, I was a scrapper back in the day. I changed a lot when I went to Wissahickon. Let me tell you, I changed a lot.
How's Atlanta? How do you like Atlanta?
I love Atlanta. It's I'm still a northerner through and through. Will never claim this as my home, but the prices are amazing. Property value, your dollar goes a whole lot further here than it will ever go in especially up, Connecticut in particular, but also in Pennsylvania. Yeah. There's a lot to do. There's plenty to do. I'm not really I stopped being a go out person probably 4 5 years ago. I just doesn't really entertain me anymore. I wish I had more of my, like friend group. My best friend, she lives in California. My mom recently moved down here from Connecticut, so I'm so happy about that. But my brothers are still in Connecticut. My dad's still in Connecticut. So I wish more people live. My goal is to get everybody down here. It's not working out that well, but I'm failing miserably. But I like Atlanta. I'll probably be here for a while. I really do like LA, but it's just so far. If I was to live anywhere else, I like Seattle and I like LA, but the best place I've ever lived is Chicago. I would move back there in a heartbeat. I love
Wow.
living in Chicago. Mm-hmm.
When were
Yeah.
you in Chicago?
Only a year and a half. So part of 2013 and part of 2014. My job moved me from Atlanta to Raleigh, to, excuse me, to Chicago and then back to Atlanta. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Chicago, Seattle.
Oh, Seattle's gorgeous. It is amazing up there. You ever been there?
I've been there once.
Yeah, I love Seattle. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a fun place.
When I check out your, I've been seeing lately on Instagram, you've been doing like some sort of like is it
Trap
gaming
trivia.
or yeah, trivia. Yeah, I was gonna say Quizzo, but I knew it wasn't that.
Yes.
Yeah, what's up with
Yeah.
that?
So a good friend of mine, her name is excuse me, her name is Kenyatta. She actually created this company where it's pretty much it is trivia, but it's more for our culture. So it's not going to be about questions around Friends or Everybody Loves Raymond or Roseanne questions. It's going to be about hip hop culture, urban culture, ranges from like 80s to current movies, music, HBCU questions, just different things about our more urban hip hop culture. And what we do is there's one restaurant where every Monday we do trivia night. They have us do trivia night there, and we're actually trying to grow it even more to do private events and things like that. But it's been really, there's three of us, Troy, Kenyatta, and myself, and we're just trying to make it a big thing where it's not just like a trivia night. It really does become like a fun adult game night for
Yeah.
everybody, and it's really picking up a lot. We started right before COVID. We had one, and then COVID hit, and we just shut it all down. And we've recently started it back up. So I'm excited to get out of my isolation so I can get back into it.
Yeah. So you're doing that at a specific bar down there in Atlanta?
Yes, it's called Black House. It's in Marietta, so it's like Metro Atlanta.
Fitting.
Yeah, right. So, and yeah, I think we're going on maybe 2 months now. We've been doing it there. They've wanted us to come back every Monday. We have other restaurants and bars or lounges that want us to also go there, but we just got to kind of see how we make this happen as our footprint grows. So shout out to Kenyatta. She put the business plan in order and she asked us to join and we were more than happy and it's going.
That's cool. We need stuff like that. I'm doing
Yeah.
I'm part of a writing team for a Black culture YouTube channel called the Chitlin Circuit. So yeah. And so we like yeah, so we're doing like, those honest trailers for Black movies that like the honest trailers would never do an actual one for. Like we're belly and we're breaking down like, you ever seen like Zach Morris? Was it Zach Morris is a wow, Jack, what is it? Not Zach Morris is a
Saved by the Bell?
Yeah, but there's like these online videos where it's like Zach Morris is trash. That's what it is. It's Zach Morris is trash. And they recap, they recap like a Saved by the Bell episode, basically showing how Zach Morris is just like a horrible person. So we're doing one called Martin is a Fuckboy. And it's breaking down episodes of Martin and all the horrible shit, the fuckboy shit that Martin does to Gina and his friends.
He did
a lot of masculinity, a lot of bullshit masculinity stuff on that show with him. But,
oh my gosh.
So
such a great show though.
But like things like that, just cultural things that are like culturally based, because there's so many things that, Trivial Pursuit is not for us.
Exactly. And a lot, but you're right. And we laugh, but as we've kind of just accepted that, and we're starting to say, no, we want entrance into this as well. Like it's a great game, but it's not relatable to me as much as it would be to many other people in our lives. And so I like that. Keep me updated on that. You said the Chitlin Circuit.
Chitlin Circuit, yeah. And you know,
How
the
do I
cool
watch stuff like that?
on YouTube, it's right on YouTube. If you like search Chitlin Circuit on YouTube, it should come up.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I have to look into that one.
Yeah, yeah. I can send you the link to the channel too. So you can
Perfect. Thank you.
But you know, the other thing is like ownership of it, because it's, you know, one thing for like, oh, Trivial Pursuit's going to put some black questions in our thing, or, you know, whatever.
Exactly.
But it's like for us to be able to introduce ownership of these things and like, oh no, this is mine. And so, you know, for trap trivia is like, that's ownership. So like as it's growing and growing, your friend owns that. That's hers, you know, that's
exactly. Yep. And there's something to be said for that, because there's like there's trap karaoke, there's different things that are, and you know, she realized that there really wasn't much for us to, and the thing about it is, it's everybody's like, an adult game night, what's that mean? We're like, no, not like that.
right.
We're like, this is just, there's going to be things you may not want a 12-year-old to be hearing about, but it really does become, I mean, we get really good crowds, and there's obviously prizes, but people are just they're like, I know that answer. And to see somebody have that moment is just amazing, because you're just like, that's all we want, is you to have a good time, fun times, meet new people, and have some drinks, food, hookah, whatever you do on whatever's your fancy, and just have a good time. And that, like, it makes us feel good to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun, Bianca. I'm so glad we like actually got to do this, get this done. And I always enjoy these early morning ones too, that are a little less boozy. My memory's a little bit sharper.
Well, again, be proud of what you've accomplished. Like, this is so cool. Like, I was excited to do it. That's why I just felt like shit every time I had to move it. But you know,
no,
life does happen. We got it done. So hopefully it's good material for you, and you get some good views and everything else.
Definitely.
This has been a pleasure, and I'm honored that you even thought to interview me. And if I can do this again, you let me know what you need. And thanks again for thinking of me.
Definitely. Thanks,
Bianca. All right, talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.